I met Joe Biden once. And that's the only living president I've ever met. And I shook Bill Clinton's hand once, I think. But anyway, the thing he said to me was, he said, "Oh, City Councilor, man." He's like, "They know where you live." And
Holy
I was like,
shit.
"Oh, that's very true. They do, yeah." And I mean, it's accurate. It's not going to say, but they know where you live. And
there's repercussions.
Yeah, it was good. It was just like, well, let's talk about it in here.
We're on it.
Oh, we're live?
We're rocking.
What?
Yeah, that's like a big thing that I've learned was like, and this is a good hint for you.
Yeah.
This is the biggest game changer for having a good podcast is not telling the guest that you started and just evolving that conversation into a natural start, because we used to start by giving this like long intro, and then I would be like, and here's Ian Cain. And then,
oh, that's so funny.
And then your mask goes on and you're like, we just had this great conversation before it started. And then I direct the attention to you like it's on, and it's like the conversation completely changes, the energy
Well,
changes.
you saw that I was waiting for a cue.
Yeah.
Right? And I'm like, oh, wait, when do we begin?
Yeah,
like,
no,
just say action.
It's literally the biggest hack for a podcast is like just letting it like evolve naturally from the pre-conversation into the podcast, because then you don't like, you know, there's less pressure.
Noted.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so going back, talk about the retreat to start.
So I recently went on a silent meditation retreat at what's called the Vipassana Meditation Center.
Okay.
And there are hundreds of these around the world. There's one in Shelburne Falls, Massachusetts, which is about 2 hours west of here, pretty close to Vermont. And this was the second one that I went on in the past year. I guess like going back into, you know, why years ago I went on a retreat during high school. I was a senior in high school. I went to BC High, which is a Jesuit preparatory school. And they offer a retreat to juniors and seniors called Kairos. And this is a 4-day retreat. You know, you don't really know much about it except that it's connected to God and spirituality and trying to develop deeper connections with those aspects. But, you know, it turns out that retreat had a huge impact on my life.
Really?
Yeah, it did. You know, it was a series of talks given by teachers and students, classmates of mine, all about connecting with yourself and with God in different ways. And, you know, throughout that period, we were given notebooks, and I started writing at that point. And I was never really a big writer to express myself about anything, but I started writing. I learned to be introspective, and I haven't stopped. I mean, I've been journaling since that time. Like, I can pinpoint that period as being sort of the catalyst for my many years of writing. And so it was 2018, and, you know, I don't know what's going on in my life. I'm in a job where I thought I had taken a role to sort of, it was like an entrepreneurial experience. I thought I was going to help grow a couple of arms of an already existing business. I was about to be married, and but I felt I guess I felt a disconnection to myself. I felt a disconnection from God, and I looked up retreats. Like, I wanted to go on a retreat, and I found the Vipassana Center. And I was like, all right, this sounds kind of cool. And I signed up for one. I didn't get off a wait list, so I didn't get to go. And then just sort of life gets in the way, because this is a 10-day retreat. It's a 10-day silent meditation retreat. And I was like, all right, I'm down. But, you know, 2019, 2020, COVID, like, I started an organization, life happens, things get in the way, and sort of carving out that time, just, it didn't happen. But then ended up separating from my partner at the time in 23. And I was like, I'm going on this retreat, like, you know. And then we're in 24, when I had registered to go on the retreat, I decided to run for U.S. Senate. And so I did the exact opposite of going inward. I threw everything out. And then, so I canceled the retreat when I got smashed in the smushed, or, you know, totally beat up in the primary. I said, there's nothing stopping me from going on this. And so I registered to go in April 25. And that was the first one I did. And the first one was like, it was wild. I don't know if nobody spends 10 days by themselves.
You were by yourself.
Yeah, I mean, you are by yourself. You're always by yourself, right? This group of people, there are probably about 100 plus people, men and women. They're separated, the quarters and sort of in the hall situations when you're doing group meditations, they're separated. But you never spend 10 days by yourself in silence. You don't spend all day meditating, that's for sure. But really looking at the deep aspects of yourself, your body, and really trying to uncover the experiences of your entire life that are trapped in your body, right? And that's what I can't teach you the method. You have to go learn on your own. But that's what the method teaches you, is to understand that you have a life's worth of experience trapped in your body, and you are essentially bringing life to it. And there's much more, because it's trying to understand your habit patterns of the mind, okay? Understanding that most people are constantly chasing pleasure or averting displeasurable or painful situations, constantly. And so what that does is cause addiction, right?
It takes you out of the present.
Yeah, it certainly takes you out of the present. But if you're constantly chasing pleasure because you want to avoid pain, that is going to be a habit pattern that you can continue. And people do that in many different ways. They might be addicted to a certain substance. They might be addicted to just sort of a dopamine hit of some sort that they get. Social media takes full advantage of this, right? And people aren't aware of that. It brings an awareness to understanding those habit patterns and to be able to change them, to have a non-reaction to those pleasurable situations or those that are non-pleasurable, and treating them equally.
Did you take that away from the retreat, or you knew that before?
No, I wasn't really aware of that at the time. I certainly familiarized myself during the retreat. But
are they guiding you through it, or?
Yeah, there are. I mean, so the days are full and they're long. So you're up at 4 a.m.
Oh wow!
And then it's blocks of like on your own time to meditate, where you can meditate in your quarters or in the group hall or in what's called a pagoda cell, which is like it's a structure with a whole number of small sort of like soundproof closets that you can go in and meditate, which are unbelievable. Like if you've ever wanted to experience what silence is like, that is the perfect place to do it. Or, any place that you can find that you can really crowd out noise to sort of understand that sound.
You said it was hard. What was hard about it?
Shutting your mind off. That's the goal. Quiet the mind.
Did you have the urge to talk?
No, I never had the urge to talk. I didn't have a problem with that. And you're passing people in the halls. You're in the food quarters or whatever, the food hall, eating across and next to people. So, it's funny how much you can learn about people through nonverbal communication.
Wow, that's super interesting.
So you start building profiles, because what else are you doing, especially when you're eating?
Wow.
You start to build profiles of all these people. And so on the last day, when you can speak, you either
validate.
Yeah, you either validate or refute those profiles that you built.
How many were like accurate?
Well, that depends, right? Because you could have built profiles on people, and you're like, I don't know if I'd actually want to engage with that person, so you don't necessarily engage with them, right? You know what I mean? It's just
that's hilarious.
Human nature. Yeah, some of them are correct. Like some of them are correct, and some
you pick up a lot of information.
You might not know, because you might not even engage with them at all.
Wow.
And directly after, it's funny. It's the 2 times that I attended, the young people immediately are like, they gravitate towards each other and they start talking right away. And I'm kind of like, I need another minute. Like I need to ease into this, because you've done a considerable amount of a surgical operation on yourself. You've opened up wounds and you've looked at things, and things have arisen that you might not have ever looked at or you forgot about, that have been dormant. And so just engaging back in trite, banal conversation is it's difficult because you just went so deep, And so the first one was just, it was new. It was fresh. You know what I mean? It was powerful. There were things that I was able to see and I guess identify in myself, like being able to look at my own anger, right? And to see that it's not actually me, right? Anger isn't me. It's not a part of me. It's just an emotion that's separate that uses me for a reaction, right? And you don't have to react, right? There's nothing, you do not have to react. When a situation that would typically call for you, or, you might typically react in a way that would evoke anger, you can look at that situation and choose not to react, right?
Be the observer.
To be the observer, right?
The first time we met, we had a pretty deep introspective conversation. Would you say that the retreat changed your trajectory or has reinforced that trajectory that we were on, or that you were on, that you described to me?
Reinforced. I think the first one was setting the stage and the foundation. The second retreat I felt was more like integration. And the second one I went on because I had met someone at the end of the first retreat who said, you should come on another one before the end of the year just to sort of lock in the benefits. And the benefits are, it's work, right? It's constant work. Like if you want to be better at anything, it's work. If you want to be better at being yourself or finding peace, or I don't know, finding, in this case, what they call a path to true liberation, it takes work. It's not just sitting for 10 days and then saying, oh, well, I did it. Let's move on. I ticked that box. I'm spiritual. I'm liberated and peaceful.
Right.
That's not how it works.
Takes a lot of discipline.
Every day, you know? And what this program recommends is that you meditate for 2 hours a day, once in the morning, once in the evening. And I'd kept that up through the summer, and then just, life happens and you deprioritize for other things. I have much more intention now to keep that up. And, again, it's just work. And that was the biggest lesson that I took from the second retreat, was that I think you often forget how much focus and intention and determination any type of work takes to be successful, and it's not just this like monetary success. It's this successful in finding peace. It's this successful in being aware. It's successful in being a human or a person, right? It certainly encouraged me to go deeper and to continue, I guess, along, as they would say, the path.
Yeah, and so I obviously have a little bit of a background, but you have a pretty interesting story. Let's backpedal way back. Where did your whole journey start? Even as far back as childhood. And I know you had kind of mentioned to me, getting into politics, it was kind of ingrained in you from a very young age. And you had mentioned to me other politicians that are kind of in the same, had the same environment. It's a common thing. So I'm kind of interested in learning a little bit more about that.
Yeah.
I'm going to go all the way back.
Born in Boston, where my parents met, and we spent the first few years of my life in the Back Bay. And by the time I think I was 4, we moved to Quincy, where my mom is from. And I had a great upbringing. I grew up across the street from my grandparents. Since I was young, I had the ability to have conversations with people, which apparently is sometimes rare in young people, whatever. But I was always encouraged that I would be, the mayor or a politician. And that was something that I took, I think, very much to heart. And
so it was kind of playful how they were saying it. It wasn't something like a Kennedy type thing.
No,
where
we're certainly no Kennedys, but yeah.
But you know what I mean.
And I don't know how that process works to be in a family like that.
Right.
And, that's a different level, I think, of encouragement.
Gotcha.
But this was, here's a engaging, thoughtful young person who says hello to people and looks them in the eye when they speak. Oh, you're going to be a politician or something, And I think I took that to heart. It was, I don't know, it must have been empowering or encouraging or something, but it was something that I certainly gravitated towards. And in politics, I used to sit with my grandmother. She used to love watching the Sunday shows and Crossfire every night on CNN when that show was on there. And so I became familiar with her and my mother's, mostly. I became familiar with my father's brand, but their brand of politics. And I guess we'll go into kind of this a little bit, but that brand was mostly Republican. My grandmother was a Republican. My grandfather was a Republican. My mother was a Republican. My father was a Democrat. And me, sort of, I guess, to give some more color, pun intended, my father's black and my mother's white. And so I always say that I came from a biracial, bipartisan household. Okay. And so, there were unique political conversations. My dad being a little more liberal, and I think, often people associate black voters with the Democratic Party, and my grandmother being conservative, also being a Catholic, and kind of being a pro-life Republican, but in the fashion of.
That's your dad's mom or your mom's mom?
This is my mom's mom.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So when I was young, somehow got put in my head that I wanted to be the president of the United States. So at 7 years old, had this sort of very vivid, impactful experience where George H.W. Bush was running for president, and my mother put a bumper sticker on my back as I went to school, and we got a picture of it. I used it in my U.S. Senate campaign.
No way.
Yeah. And that was empowering. There was something about that connection and that identity that was empowering. And that was the start. That was the planting of a seed that really didn't stop germinating and growing in me and in my mind for many years. I set a plan in how I wanted to accomplish that goal, and that included going to BC High. It included going to Boston College. It included going to Boston College Law School. I'd practice law. I would be a state senator, and then I'd run for president. It was very simple. Like, how else do you, that's it.
Hilarious.
That's it. And so, then life happens. I did go to BC High. I did go to Boston College. And, I think that that thing just never went away. Like, I always thought I knew what I wanted to do, even though I was kind of fighting it along the way. And then you start learning about yourself too.
What do you mean you were fighting it along the way?
Because I'm like, why am I doing this?
You were making decisions that weren't aligned with.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Totally. Because of that thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. We're like, why am I so hooked on this? Why do I feel like I have to do this?
Mm-hmm.
And so I followed it to BC. And, one of the things that was a huge, huge hang up for me was when you think of a political future and you think of a vision, mine certainly involved marrying a woman, having 2.5 kids, and having that picture perfect image that you need, because politics it's just theater, right?
Mm-hmm.
It is actors on stage showing you what they think you want to see. At a certain point in my teenage years, I recognized that I probably wasn't going to marry a woman. And that was a very difficult thing for me.
That shook things up?
Well, it didn't immediately shake things up, but it was a very difficult thing for me to accept.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I've got this political seed. I'm fighting myself in who I am, and I'm fighting my, own personal humanity, right? And trying to be this political image. And, you had asked me a very thoughtful question when we last met about what it was like to hide, right? What it was like to hide. And I've never been asked that question before, and I thought it was really poignant because it was terrible. But except I thought that my hiding would give me a greater reward on the other side, right? And I think for me, when I'm coming out of college, and I mean I'm dating a woman, and I'm like, what the hell am I doing? I broke down basically. Like, I couldn't keep that lie up anymore.
Because you're carrying the weight.
Yeah, I couldn't. I just couldn't do it. And I was, and it. So when the crazy part is that I then tried to manage the political dream. So not live to, sort of for myself or for the best life that I could possibly live, but for the political dream. So I think I actually came out just to sort of protect myself from any future political ramifications that could come, because I knew I was still going to run for office, right? Which is crazy. And so, you then get into, some interesting complications too. I worked after college for a commercial real estate firm for a couple of years. Then I joined an energy-focused private equity fund, and we owned power plants in the Middle East, North Africa, and East Asia. And I was just a Quincy kid who, didn't know the world too much outside of what I had studied or, understood through media. And then all of a sudden was sort of thrown in the global scene and started traveling the world and understanding more about geopolitics and global finance. And we were traveling a lot to the Middle East at that time. And that just kind of further complicated where sort of I believed that I fit in the world. Having a familiarity with Middle Eastern culture and society, not necessarily being so favorable to homosexuality and things like this. I was back in the closet, right? I was back hiding. Again, though, sitting in this place where you think you're doing the right thing for your own professional success and not for your own health and wellness, really, right? And I give that color because it's like, this is the story that's interspersed. It's like trying to be something throughout my life that just really makes for a more complicated living, But the political thing never went away. But I ended up going to business school, got an MBA, came back to Quincy, was living with my folks, working at a startup in Cambridge, tech company, and a seat on the city council opened up here. And I said, if I don't run for this, I'm never going to do it. So I ran. And it was super exciting. I was so engaged. This was my political startup. I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. And I won. I sat in that role for 10 years, just finished my last term in the beginning of January.
So to backpedal a little bit more, when you were a kid and you have this like romantic view of being a politician, what were you perceiving that was going to be like, and what was attracting you to that? And then what was that journey into that like, and those realizations of this is the actuality of what it is like, and then what is that actuality?
It's a lot in there. I think I was looking at George H.W. Bush as president of the United States and saying that is a character, that is a model, that is a statesman, right? I used to write when I was a kid. I used to write to him at the White House, right? So I've got all these like
that's awesome.
Yeah, I think what you think politics is are leaders guiding citizenry to where? I don't know. Places with lower or no taxes, in certain cases, protections around social services that could be, healthcare or defense in a certain way. You get positions around that. What you didn't have in the 80s and the 90s and into the early turn of the century was a constant media cycle. The television media had its own 24-hour cycle, but you could shut the TV off. And not like you can't shut your phone off these days, but it was just different inputs, right? Mm-hmm. So, and people were more aligned on the communications that they received as opposed to the information that's distributed today and consumed. So that's the model that I look at. I think in looking at the television federal level model, I don't think I ever thought I would do anything local. There was a minute in 2010 when I thought I would run for a state Senate seat that had opened up, but I knew I wasn't personally ready to do that, and so I didn't. But even running at the local level, I thought I was better than that or something. You know what I mean? Like just based on where I thought I was going to go. So, you know, what politics is, from my experience, like, how do I articulate this? One, it's a game.
Mm-hmm.
It's a game. You know, it is probably most often not the best of us, the people that play this game too. And it is a game that it plays to sometimes the worst part of people, their egos, their desires, their lust for power or for some sort of authority or position. And it's about optics. It is really about that, playing a character.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, most often I think the thing that I learned, it's like you can advance. One, you can't make everyone happy, and that's just, it's impossible to do. But you could be doing all the best things in the world, and if somebody doesn't like one little thing about you or what you said or what you have done, then it negates all of those good things that you've advanced, right? People unfortunately have no ability to contextualize broader institutional situations and put them all into perspective. They can focus on one little thing and decide whether they like that or not.
Are you saying people, the politicians themselves, or the audience?
Talking about people, citizens,
Gotcha.
you know, constituents.
Gotcha.
And that makes it difficult. Yeah, but I think some politicians, you know, they're out for survival. You know, they need this for their own identity sometimes. And I know there was another part to your question. I think I don't know if I'm touching on it yet.
I think you covered most of the question, but to just go a little bit deeper into that, like what specifically caused that transition in perspective? Like, were there any specific instances where you're like, okay, this is a little bit different than I expected it to be?
Oh, yeah. I mean, right from the get-go, because I think when you get into something and you're like, okay, I'm ready to work, like, I care. You know, I was elected to serve in this role.
And they're like, slow down.
Not anybody's saying slow down, but you start to pick up, oh, my God, these people are just like kind of, some, not all of them. I'm not speaking, this isn't a blanket statement about politicians, but these people, they don't really care, or they're jaded. Maybe they're jaded at that point, but they don't seem to care. And that used to really piss me off, because I'm like, I care. How can you not care? Like, what are you doing here? Why are you wasting everyone's time here if you really don't care about this role? You know? And you know, it was very early on, because you know, you wouldn't have a particular level of engagement on certain issues, or people would just sort of support things without, you know, you understanding if they even understood the concepts. And I think that is unfortunately more prevalent than it isn't.
Do you think on the local level is the same as the federal level, just scaled up? Is the game the same?
Yeah.
It's a game of influence, right?
I do. Yeah, I think that this is I think local level actually is the best place to learn how to play politics, because you are interacting with your neighbors and like family and friends. Like, it's just close proximity. I met Joe Biden once, and that's the only living president I've ever met. And I shook Bill Clinton's hand once, I think. But anyway, the thing he said to me was, he said, "Oh, City Councilor, man." He's like, "They know where you live." And
Holy
I was like,
shit.
"Oh, that's very true. They do, yeah." And I mean, it's accurate. It's an accurate statement. They know where you live, and
there's repercussions.
But you know, it's the best place to learn, because it's retail politics. And so, you know, it's like you're a solo shop. Like, I don't, you know, we had some shared admin in an office, but I didn't have a team. So you're taking the calls, you're fielding the email, you're
And you're getting quicker real-time feedback.
absolutely right. Like, so if you don't respond to someone about their tree being trimmed or a sidewalk or a curb, you know what I mean, something like that, their trash being picked up, they're going to be annoyed, right? And that information can spread a lot faster, than if you were probably at a higher level in politics. You can't escape, you know what I mean, being a local politician as to the higher levels. And I think people, not that everybody, I don't know how anybody looks at anybody, right? So, but I think that sometimes some of these the federal level politicians, like, people put them on pedestals, and I think that's just because they now have to play at this sort of celebrity like level in order to remain relevant.
Interesting.
You know,
What skill set do you like? What is the makeup of a politician? What is that like skill set that's required to be good, whether it's good or bad?
I mean, you gotta have,
Charisma probably is a big one.
yeah, yes, yeah. You have to be able to communicate, right? It's marketing. So you're marketing yourself. You got to be able to communicate. You got to believe in yourself. So you got to have some ego. You got to be able to raise money in order to allow your message to get out. That was, it's one thing. Again, local level is one thing where you do need to raise money. It's about spending money on paper and postage. Paper being like, graphic cards that you mail out, maintaining a website. But postage is a big one, especially in an early campaign. But when you get up to the federal level, like the U.S. Senate seat that we try to go for, that's enterprise building. So, I made an estimate. I'm like, I think you needed $50 million to have a chance at beating an incumbent for U.S. Senate. And that's building staff. That is media buys. That is paying consultants. You're essentially paying everyone to help you get your message out in a broader fashion. But that's enterprise building. It's cash flows.
Is it really just a money game at the end of the day?
At that level, I think, yeah.
What are those objectives like on that team, like that you're building out that admin and those consultants? Is it getting dirt on the other side? Is it surveying the people to find out, what the audience wants to hear and then delivering them that message?
I think it's
differentiating it from.
I think it's all of that. You have a consulting team that helps you manage the effective operation, and then you've got a campaign manager that works with them, and you got research people that will help you do research for your own education, but then research on your opponent or opponents. Then there are communications consultants, right? There's a PR that needs to happen. Really, there are a lot of people out there that get into this political game that are looking for continuity of employ. And so,
What does that mean?
Like, campaigns are temporary. They're not forever. And so people hop from campaign to campaign because they need continued employment.
Gotcha.
Right.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So, there's a lot of people that, that's their life is hopping from campaign to campaign.
Interesting.
And there's, if there's fresh funds coming into a campaign, then
it
helps that.
Would you say that the Senate race was a positive experience or a negative experience?
I think it was. I think it was positive. And despite the outcome, which I didn't even get 10% of the vote, which is fine. I learned so much. I think, I was called to do it. It was an opportunistic play. It wasn't like I had eyed trying to challenge Elizabeth Warren for the U.S. Senate seat that she holds from Massachusetts. But there had been sort of this conversation that had evolved from the space that we play in QUBIC Labs in the blockchain and digital asset space, where she has been the most vocal opponent to the space in Congress. And, it had a conversation with one larger organization that played, and there was some scuttlebutt about my name. And I said, you know what? I'm going to go for it. Because if I can bridge GOP support in Massachusetts to the crypto money, then this actually becomes a serious race. And then, you learn how tough it is to build that organization in the 6 months that you need to, in a primary contest that I had to play in. But, I learned that money is paramount, because that allows the car to be built, right? The engine in the car to be built so that you can run. Because if you don't have that team around, you just can't, you can't get a message out. Everything is essentially pay to play. And that is team, advertising, down to Facebook ads, social media ads, and things like that.
Right.
So if you don't have the budget for that, then you can't do it. Even in Massachusetts, ballot access is pretty difficult. You need 10,000 registered voter signatures to get on the ballot. And I didn't have a volunteer effort. So of the money that I raised, I had to spend $150,000 on getting signatures.
Wow.
Yeah, just to get on the ballot.
With the Elizabeth Warren situation specifically, you said that she opposed, and correct me if I unpack this improperly, but she opposed the blockchain initiatives that you were bringing forth or that were already present. What was what was her stance in the public, and then what do you think her vested interest in taking that stance was?
Those are great questions. So her public stance was in her sort of announcement for her campaign that we ended up running in, was that she was building an anti-crypto army. So you're like, what? Because nobody's anti-crypto. And, at least not a large enough constituency to build around a campaign. But she had just become antagonistic to the space. And why? I have no idea. To protect the interests of the incumbent large institutional banks in the country. I have no idea, even though the banks that she says she's against, because that's what the position would be. But the crypto space itself is a very interesting is an interesting thing, because there are many different philosophies within now that exist, and it started as a disintermediation of entities from preventing us from transacting between each other, right? So Bitcoin is the most popularly known use case, but so get banks out of the way, get lawyers out of the way, get any person that could stand in the way of you and I transacting, right? Freedom money, they were calling it. And now we've got so many different sort of crypto applications and speculative tokens and coins that a lot of that has gone by the wayside. It's become more of a speculative asset than it has this sort of concept and philosophy of freedom money. From her perspective, she takes always, I think, I'm the consumer protection advocate, which is a character, that's a role, and because if she was a true consumer advocate for the space, then she would probably be working to put better guardrails in place to allow the space to thrive while protecting consumer interests, as opposed to just being a total stalwart and being in the way of progress in terms of commercial engagement and activity. So, I can't explain anything that Elizabeth Warren does. And most of these people that become characters like Elizabeth Warren, you don't really know them. You think you understand who they are or how they think or why you like or dislike them. You know nothing about these people, And it's very interesting. A lot of the people who end up developing these, I'm just looking at Massachusetts, these people who have developed profiles who have optically become successful in politics are not from Massachusetts. They're not from here, So it's almost like there's nothing in the way of them building a character that nobody would be able to validate or invalidate.
Wow.
Right?
It's very interesting.
I mean, that's just a theorem, but it must hold some truth, because there's no way you can claim to understand the true nature, thoughts, motivations of a person like that, or even an Ed Markey who's going to be 80 years old and running for Senate again this year.
How are they typically going? What is the standard for building that political platform? Is it just most people don't really have their opinions of their own, right? Isn't it just surveying, understanding what the audience wants, and then regurgitating that to align with like your donors or whatever your own interests are, and like creating a message that encapsulates all of those things.
Yeah, I think you said it. Repeat the first part of the question again.
Like, I just want to understand better the process of building that political platform. Like, what goes into the messaging that you hear? Like, it's people are taking it at face value. Like, this is the opinion of this person, and so that's why I am voting for this person. But I think it's interesting to understand like what actually goes into it and what you are hearing. Like, what is the substance of that message?
Yeah. Well, I don't know. If you look at Elizabeth Warren, she was kind of thrust upon Massachusetts. Like she had, she'd been the Harvard professor, but she was she created that Consumer Financial Protection Bureau under President Obama, and that gave her some clout. She started challenging, I think, the Treasury and the Fed and things like that, and she built a national profile. And that's what you need to do, right, in order to gain the interest and awareness of large national donors who fund these operations, because it's the same lists going around all over the place. Mm-hmm. And so if people don't know you, if you don't have name ID, then they're most likely not going to support you. But
what do you mean lists? It's like people know who the donors are.
Yeah, of course. I mean, all that information is public. Right? Yeah. The Federal Election Commission, like you can go look up who's making contributions to who and to what political action committees and where those funds are going, But yeah, I think there's a combination of profile building, and then there is, there's public opinion, right? There's understanding the trade winds and what people think of this and that and the other thing, and then taking positions on them. I wish that there was more integrity in politics, right? But I think there's two sides to that. I don't actually think that that's the politician's fault. Mm-hmm. Like, the politician doesn't need to lack integrity, but in order to be successful in the role, they need to placate to the people who, are going to vote for them. Right. And so, because I think oftentimes when people have this desire for things like transparency and for openness and for truth, they don't actually want it. They either don't want it or they can't handle it, because they've been programmed to believe something else. And so anything that's antithetical to that kind of core programming, they're most often not going to believe or refuse to believe. Mm-hmm. So, I think it's a case by case basis, but you watch it. I mean, it's an ongoing saga and sort of soap opera, and it's kind of gross. I'm just thinking of like some of these people, like think about, what's her name? AOC. Okay. Like, is she out there passing meaningful legislation? I have no idea. Like, is she changing people's lives? I have no idea. But is she popular because of her sort of celebrity status? Absolutely. Same with that woman in Texas, Jasmine Crocker, right? She's, a little firecracker. I can't even tell you like one thing that she stands for, but I know that she's out there. I know that she gets press. I know that she's popular on social media. I mean, it's all these profiles like that. That woman who just retired, she had another acronym name, the Republican woman. Marjorie Taylor Greene. Okay, right. Yeah. So, she stepped down. She stepped down and or decided not to run again. And you don't know why, but I don't know. That's just another persona. One thing that I read recently was like, a person like her and a person like that woman who ran for vice president with John McCain. I can see Russia from your house. Do you remember her? Come on. Thank you. Sarah Palin. Oh, Sarah Palin. Like, those are actually who those people are, And so, like, but for better or for worse, like, they are who they are, and, like, they're not trying to be anyone else. And, I don't know this. I don't know these people. But most of these other people are playing characters.
Yeah. So would you say that they're obviously having to play this game between two audiences, which is the voters are important and the donors are important, and probably the two are contradicting each other. What holds more leverage, and where do they have to put more loyalty? Probably the donors, right? Or
Well,
it's a crazy balance, I'm sure.
I don't know. I think it depends on who you are, right? Depends on because you can. I don't know. I think there's all sorts of intricacies,
Yeah.
and I think there are things
There's
that you
no
can,
cookie cutter.
because the money's the means, right? And
It's like chicken before the egg kind of deal.
but it is like it is a compact of some sort, right? Like I'm making a contribution to you, and there probably are greater expectations the more money that you're making, in contributions, especially when it's around different vested corporate interests, right, or commercial interests or whatever. Who knows? But yeah, I think for example, a lot of the crypto money in the last cycle in 24 went to a guy named Bernie Moreno in Ohio. I think he got about $40 million from crypto. Okay. And he beat an incumbent named Sherrod Brown for the U.S. Senate seat in Ohio. And he's not, Bernie Moreno wasn't on the ground in Ohio saying like, for crypto, this is crypto. It was probably things like the Haitians are eating the dogs and the cats, right?
Yeah.
So the money was the means to get the message.
Yeah.
Because nobody really, voters don't care about crypto, at least from my perspective. Like there's discussions to be had, but I don't think they have the voter constituency is organized enough to actually propel candidates. It's a means, and I think candidates are always looking for new markets for political contributions, and crypto happened to be the next big one.
Mm-hmm.
And so it propelled, a lot of money into the last thing in the presidential election as well. So I think it really depends.
So, kind of as a last question before segueing out of the politics stuff, if you are a voter, how can you actually audit a person and say, is this person doing what's best for me, instead of listening to their messaging, which clearly is like just marketing? What would be a way that you could do that audit on a person and say, because you said, is this person really passing meaningful legislature? Is that the gauge or the metric of like someone who's doing well?
Well, I mean, that's your job, right? You are a legislator. Is it to just talk? Is that your job?
See, like, it's funny because like I feel like I know a good bit about politics or like I pay attention to it, and until you're saying this, like, really I couldn't probably have brought it. If you asked what is a politician's job,
Yeah.
I wouldn't have known.
Well, for a member of Congress, like you're elected on behalf of people to take votes in Congress,
Mm-hmm.
right? And to help with constituent services, to be a liaison between the federal government and citizenry, right? So, what
are you actually litigating or?
No, you're not litigating. There are bills.
You're just voting.
Yeah, you're just voting.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
So you look at the votes,
Mm-hmm.
right? What are they voting on? Who are they collecting money from? Does that money affect what they're voting on?
Mm-hmm.
Does this benefit me? What are you doing for people? Because I don't know. I mean, I don't. That question up and down, like all over the place, like and it's subjective, like what people want. That's where it gets murky.
Right.
But the distraction stuff, I think, plays in a lot of people's favor. The distraction and the deflection, I think, plays in a lot of people's favor because it will take the light away from what they're doing or not doing.
Right. And so what was your descent out of politics and then, into transitioning what you're doing now?
Yeah. So, did the Senate campaign. After that, I had to make a decision on running for city council again or not. And, I came to a point, I said, I can't mail anything in, and my heart's not totally in this. So I'm not going to run again. I don't like to half-ass anything. And I think 10 years is a good period of time. You do have a shelf life. I think people, as I said, just like doesn't matter what you do, they just might not care for you anymore. And I was feeling a bit of that too, and I think I'm like, I'm done, I did it, and I got to move on, because the political dream and the kid, it's time to grow up.
Yeah. This is a little bit off topic. What do you think of this whole like Nick Shirley thing going on in Minnesota
Who's Nick Shirley?
with the Somalian fraud?
Oh,
He's the one who exposed it. Like,
he's the journalist.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do I think of it?
yeah.
I think it's doing what it needs to do, which is causing friction between people, and you know what I mean? Like, whether I have an opinion on it or not is irrelevant. Like, what it's doing is evoking an emotion in people.
And that's what it's intended to do.
Yeah. I mean, I don't doubt that this Nick Shirley was trying to get a good story out there and expose some corruption. But again, so if this corruption did take place, and this group of people, which people have opinions about, depending on who you are, right? Like, there's these words are loaded. So Somalians are loaded because they're not called Americans. Like, why aren't they called Americans? Are they Americans, or like are they like, have they immigrated here? Are they, why are we calling them Somalians?
That's super valid.
Right?
Yeah.
Because we're calling them Somalians, and so people are
Because
like, oh, it's the
people care about
Somalians who
this.
took our American money. So you're like, okay. And then there are people who are like, no, well, we need to protect everyone. And it's just like, you have people that have opinions. They're not actually in the fight. They're watching television. That's the biggest problem, is that you have set up a little box of something that's going on. You've thrown that box into the wild, and you got people fighting over it.
Wow.
That's it.
Yeah.
But that's every issue. And so, like, I was talking to somebody about this the other day. You're like, all right, so what's the point at which I need to care that something is truly wrong in this country, and then I need to like take action and do something about it? What's that point? What is the point of no return? I have no idea. But it's sort of like, I can't get wrapped up in all these issues that are just thrown at you that you have nothing to do with, that make you look at Tim Waltz in a different way. I don't care about Tim Waltz. I don't care about Tim Waltz, but that's what I think about that.
Yeah, and I was just having this conversation with Sam yesterday, where I have some people in my circle that have done some work in Latin America, and they've dealt with dictators, and it's funny because some of the dictators have essentially been like, most of these people need a dictator, and they're like, and the people that critically think and don't get wrapped up in all of this, like, this dictatorship won't affect them.
Yeah.
And the people that need the dictator, whether they were in a free market or in, a democratic society or whatever, they're going to always be the ones that are complaining. So it doesn't really matter. Like, they need someone to tell them like which way to go.
Right.
And it's just like, I don't know, it just puts it into an interesting perspective. Like, it doesn't really matter. And the smartest thing you can do is just like focus on like your own life and contributing to the world in a positive way, and watching politics and is probably not the best use of your time.
Remember that guy, Chamath, whatever his name, the Facebook guy? He's on the All In. He does the All In podcast.
No.
He came out on the scene like 6 or 7 years ago, and all of a sudden became a thing, and now he's hanging out at the White House. Anyway, he once was on a podcast and was talking about issues back and forth with someone, and he made a statement that was like, that's below my line. You know what I mean? Like, I don't care about that. It's not worthy of my thought. And he got flack for it or whatever. That's okay. You're like, I can't, like, what am I supposed to care about? Like, how?
It's kind of subjective too.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So what have you transitioned into, and what do you care about?
Yeah. Myself. Advancement. So 6+ years ago, while on the city council, we in Quincy have been ushering in a lot of real estate development, mostly apartment complexes, and it's been great growth activity. We've put in thousands of new units. What has been missing from that equation is new businesses, startups, innovation, entrepreneurship. That is very much enjoyed in places like Cambridge, and we've sort of built this new seaport. There's a whole bunch of stuff going on down there. But I wanted to see more of that activity take place south of Boston, specifically in Quincy. And so got together with a friend. We put together for a model for QUBIC Labs. And QUBIC Labs is, we're an innovation hub. We have created a space which now has 3 pillars to supporting entrepreneurs. And most of those entrepreneurs are building businesses around blockchain and digital assets, like businesses. And we had originally had a focus of financial and government tech. And actually, a lot of the applications for blockchain and digital asset go into those spaces. So it's kind of all come together. But we support founders through an R&D program. So we've given out a number of non-dilutive grants to founders to work on pilots and minimum viable products in order to get their projects and companies off the ground, and then we help them raise capital on the back end. We've got an accelerator program. So it's a 12-week accelerator program. We've got about 95 plus mentors and advisors that come in and give special talks around different aspects of business building and components around. And then we build ecosystems. So we host an event called Boston Blockchain Week. We've hosted that since 2022, and we host it right here from Quincy Center. And it's been a great growing concern, but it's been a fun organization to build.
If an entrepreneur wants to get assistance from the government or integrate with the government or utilize the government, like public resources, what does that look like?
I think there's a couple things in there. If they want to work with the government and have a government as a customer, then they're going to directly sell to them, right? That's not. I mean, they are using public resources as a sort of vendor, but relationship. If they're looking for public resources, I mean, there's a number of ways. Like we're a nonprofit. We're a 501c3. We were successful in raising public funds through a grant program that's run by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts through a quasi-public entity called Massachusetts Technology Collaborative, which allowed us to build this whole thing to the level that it's at today. And that was, I call that it's an exercise in it's business and political relationships, like sort of in one, but also you have to have a good product. So we had a good story, we had a good product that we were, and this was around the R&D program specifically, but I think it was also sort of a confluence of business and political relationships that sort of that validates the work, right? Because it validates the characters of the people that are putting it together, and I think it's just like anything else. Relationships are very important to access. And that's one thing, that's an important thing in politics too, right? Is maintaining relationships is very important. I mean, not that, but at that point, especially from our side, it's like you still have to have the chops to execute on what you're proposing. And we've done that over the past 3 years. We blew our project out of the water.
What were the results of that? What were the metrics of that?
So we built a $5 million public-private partnership. So we got $2 million from the state, and then we had $3 million in capital and in-kind contributions to create this R&D and commercialization program around blockchain. That $2 million public investment, we turned into about $33 million of private capital invested directly in the 25 companies that we supported.
So a lot of people have kind of a counterintuitive, or they don't have a proper view on how to start a company. They would think of an idea without going out and seeing what the market wants, and then they might go to the market and find out that that market doesn't really want that idea. What have you seen, or where do you think the opportunities lie right now, as you're channeling this money, you're obviously seeing what people are paying attention to and want to invest in. What would you say for like someone who's a new entrepreneur or someone who's exited a business and moving into their next opportunity? Where do you see the opportunities lie?
Wow. I mean, that's a big question. One thing that popped in my mind that when you were lining up the question is, I think sometimes people build companies around the capital that's available to be invested. Because sometimes there's people that are flush with investable capital through venture and private equity, and so people are kind of just
bootstrapping.
coming up here. I got new ideas. You know, I think that where we play, and we're now talking a lot more about digital infrastructure. So that's blockchain, AI, cyber security, and connectivity. And connectivity is a play on the work that we've been doing in Quincy, advancing a municipal fiber optic network. So, we see some opportunities to build some kind of cool concepts integrating the four of these verticals. But yeah, I think that right now, what we're seeing is the transformation of the global financial system. And, the global financial system is deeply intricate. And it is largely run by people that think in very traditional terms. That I think to change the actual underlying infrastructure of the space is going to take longer than people anticipate, even from the sort of internal space side. But we see great opportunity there. It's a very long-term sort of vision, but it's looking at those spaces that are ripe for innovation because nobody's running there because it's not easy, that we like.
Yeah.
So, we are spending a lot of time looking at the municipal bond market, which is a huge marketplace that is ripe for innovation. One of our member companies helped advance the first municipal bond offering on blockchain in the country in 2024. And so, that organization has continued to identify cities and towns, municipalities, and other entities that want to advance that product or use case.
Unpack the municipal bond thing, because I don't think most people have any idea anything about that.
Absolutely. So, cities and towns are primarily funded through their own capital budgets. Those capital budgets are funded by your taxes, primarily property taxes. There's also, maybe tourism taxes or sales taxes that go into city revenues. But that's how a city or town is primarily budgeted. If a city wants to build a firehouse or a school or a bridge, some sort of infrastructure, they don't have that money typically on their books. And so they need to go to the markets to raise that money. So what you do is you put out an offering through the municipal bond market. So this is a market that was created, I think, over 100 years ago, probably the turn of the 19th century. I think it was around the time of the IRS. I could be wrong about that. Anyway, and you basically say how much you're offering. There's an interest rate. There's coupon payments, which means that there's a regular payment at a particular rate that you are paid on an annual basis as yield or a return, and then you pay back that principal and interest at the end of the life or the term of that bond. So that is how cities and towns rely on, growth.
Is it kind of like factoring a little bit? Like you're like,
It's not necessarily factoring. It's just like taking a loan.
yeah.
It's
And then your
just-
receivable is the taxes.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Well,
Okay.
that's how you pay the debt service.
Yeah.
That's how
That
you pay
makes
the
sense.
interest and the principal in the coupon.
So, what is it like in a city like Boston? That's an extremely old city.
Yeah.
How do you implement like new infrastructure, whether it's digital infrastructure or actual infrastructure, in such an old city and get them to adopt these like new systems? It must be kind of difficult, like moving like a.
So even us, we're an old city, but the regular infrastructure that you're used to, like water mains and sewers and different types of pipes, like that, we've done a ton of work here, and I think that work is ongoing in places like Boston too. And those things need to be replaced. Like you've got 100-year-old pipe systems that certainly need to be upgraded, right? That are carrying your water to your sink. The digital side, that's also, I mean, the entire that's where we see, because we see an opportunity to improve, I guess, innovation around cities and towns. And how are cities and towns innovating for their own accord as governments that serve people, but how are they enabling residents and businesses to be more successful in this digital economy? So, the fiber project here, that's totally innovative. The bond project here, totally innovative. Because the idea with the bond is that, so you don't know how to buy into a municipal bond, which you could, but you have to go through a broker, and there are minimums. We want to make a retail market so that you could participate at a low dollar amount in a bond offering and align your civic and financial sort of interest at the local level, right? So you're like, oh, I like that school.
Is it kind of like crowdfunding?
It would be in that case. And it is about liquidity, because you're not going to get $100 million from your own city or town to build the school. So you'll have an allocation, a small carve out, but you'll need to raise the rest from the public markets. So, but having that carve out, allowing you to buy $100 worth of a bond at the local level, and you help build a school, but then allowing those proceeds from the bond that you purchased to continue to pay fees at the local level. You could you could use those proceeds to pay for your taxes or different fees at the local level, and you keep that money in the system, and that's very important for circulation in a local economy. So that's the eventual goal. It certainly takes these are long-term projects. It takes a while to one, you have to familiarize people with the underlying tech, and you have to do that in a way that's not discouraging, right? Because I think once a lot of people hear the word blockchain, they're like, I don't know what that is, and then you have to learn, and you're like, no, it's just this. This is data, and
so how do you simplify it?
Well, I always call it data management. It's just a different method for data management, at least in these cases. Like even with the bond that you did in Quincy, it was done on a private blockchain, which means that, so in a typical public blockchain, you can access the ledger and see activity. You can see transactions, where they're happening, how much, but it's pseudo-anonymous, so you don't know who, you don't know. So you wouldn't know anything about that transaction, like the transaction that took place here, or anything that could take place in the secondary market, because it's behind somebody's own firewall. Again, what we want to do is make that information public. So the blockchain, what it would enable, and governments, if they really believed in transparency, would effectively adopt these, this technology, is that you can trace funds. I mean, you can clearly identify and trace where funds are going, and where they've come from, and where they're going, and how they're being allocated, and how your tax money is being spent. But that would be too clever.
I've seen some interesting concepts where they talk about literally using decentralized, or using blockchain for the backbone of the government itself, because you could receive votes through it. That vote, could be some ledger transaction that creates some outcome that's uncorruptible.
Yeah, it could be.
Have you thought about any of those things?
Well, there's a company that exists in Boston called Votes that's been trying to push this concept out. I think they've done some work in Utah and in Mexico, and I think in Canada as well. So that is a concept. The one thing that it comes down to, which nobody has really cracked yet, is this digital identity. So having a unique identifier that's sort of affixed to all of this different activity that takes place. So but it would be effectively a centralized managed, which goes antithetical to the philosophy of a decentralized.
Give me that again. Unpack that again.
So the whole, as I was saying before about blockchain and digital assets, the whole effective use case from the get-go was to decentralize the ability to transact. So
not needing an intermediary.
Yeah, not needing an intermediary, or not having that intermediary know your business. Taking the bank, they manage a central ledger of all the activity of their customers and clients, right? So in the case of a digital identity vis-a-vis a government that would be managing your votes, that identity would need to figure out how to be decentralized, anonymized, right? You know what I mean, or pseudo-anonymized, so that your vote is still protected and private. That's one thing, but tying that all to different services.
Oh, okay. I get what
right?
you're saying.
Yeah.
Interesting. So when you are picking these companies, first of all, when is the next incubator that you guys are doing? And then how are you filtering and picking these companies, and what are you guys looking for right now?
Yeah, we just so of our dedicated accelerator program, we just launched our second cohort yesterday. This is an all virtual cohort. We got people from all around the world. We had about a couple hundred applicants, and we chose 13 companies. The process, we mostly list our application on a startup website called F6S, and so that's been a great guide for us to funnel people through the pipeline. We've got a multi-stage interview process. There's a sort of initial hello, introduction, get to know you. We've got a commercial assessment and a technical assessment as well that follow. And then we give the green light to come into the program. We look for early stage companies that have not raised beyond a seed round. We want to be able to get to them early, probably by a stage. We're not really sure why you're going into an accelerator program.
Can you break down those funding stages for the common man?
Yeah, and I think the ranges have changed too because of the amount of capital that is being deployed. So you're seeing, the scale used to be it's like a friends and family round where you might raise $50, $100, $250,000, which would also be pre-seed, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just an earlier stage before you go to institutional money. That would be the later, which institution might come in at seed stage, or they might not come in until a Series A. But I was just looking at a document for a seed round that's looking for $3.5 million.
Mm-hmm.
So that, you've probably seen upwards of 5. Then you're starting to get into A range,
So with each of those stages, what collaterals does the entrepreneur need to have to successfully raise that money? Have you found?
Collateral?
Yeah, so not actual collateral, but they have to have a proof of concept, or they have to have.
Oh yeah,
For each of those stages,
yeah.
What?
By that, again, you're looking at you're trying to compare very different things. So product market fit, a true technical capability, like a client base of some sort, revenue always looks good. Those are real demonstratable things. Like, the most successful company is not going to raise money. They've got a product, they sell it. A lot of folks who are looking to raise money are looking to build more technical aspects, which are good, right? Maybe having some path to intellectual property or something that creates value. Revenue and customers.
That's a good point that a lot of people miss the mark on, is when you said that a really good company won't have to raise money. And I see so many entrepreneurs that their entire focus is on raising money, and they put very little focus into their product or learning the metrics or the proof of concept and getting that per unit due diligence. And I'm sure you experience that a lot too for people who are trying to raise money.
And I think that's become the game. I think, people see raising money as the activity as opposed to building the business. And not that they don't see that building the business is important activity, but they do put paramount.
Do you think it's because it's easy to raise money, or there's a lot of free capital available out there that people?
During different periods, maybe. I don't think it's easy to raise money. I think it's a difficult thing, and sometimes the terms can be very onerous.
What's the climate right now, do you think?
I think it's getting a little tight out there.
A lot of funds are not invested in companies, right? They have a lot of just like.
I think things are murky. You don't truly know what the status of the economy is, right? We play in tech, but the economy as a whole, we don't make things anymore, right? We're not growing in manufacturing or production that I'm aware of. You know what I mean? We are growing as a service economy. And you see a lot of the sensation and attention being drawn toward these larger technology-focused fundraisers in the multi-billion-dollar level, but they're for consumer applications like a ChatGPT, Anthropic, like, these different AI plays, and data centers have been raising a ton of money. Again, this is infrastructure, but the data centers are becoming, difficult to, I think, actually get through development because the cost of electricity and the dependence on water is so high. So I don't know. Again, I think it all fits into a greater scheme of a reconstitution of the global financial, and I say social systems as well, because I think social systems are being recalibrated. And a lot of this infrastructure, fundraising and activity that, connects to the technological, the sort of lower levels in the startup world it all connects to that.
It's pretty interesting how like these data centers are, and the technology is being created with like an awareness that there's going to be a less reliance on labor, or a less ability to rely on that labor. And so they're relying on automation. But to power that automation, you need like the plumbing and electricians. And it's like a weird shift, like how
it's a very weird shift. Yeah.
What were you saying when you said that and I'll wrap it up here, but you think that there's I don't know what the statement you used was, but there's a social, there's a change in the social dynamic.
Financial and so, yeah. I mean, the financial systems, again, it's sort of technologically enabled. It is, you're hearing a lot about blockchain and digital assets, and I think that's dramatically going to change the way that people transact over time, because I think that regular people still don't understand. So, if you're not giving someone a debit card or something comparable to that, then the bar to education in onboarding people into a new system needs to be very low. It needs to take little to no education, and they just need to be able to plug and play and use it. And so when that comes, then it'll be much more prolific. The social system, you've got movements across the world, migrations that are taking place that I don't think we really understand. Like I don't think that it is by chance that these migrant movements that are taking place across the United States and in Europe are by accident, right? I think that the conversations that don't take place are about the different aspects of true labor needs to support a society. And you're hearing it in different ways. You heard the President Trump recently say something about the U.S. not having adequate talent, that we need to continue to bring in, let's just, for example, Indian labor on the H-1B to work at tech companies because we don't have the talent here. And I think that happens at all levels, for whatever reason. But and then that fits into social programs. When the labor rates are not keeping up with cost of living, you need to find ways to support a society. And so that'll be more government outlays of social programs that will support and continue to support. We've seen it from the state level and the federal level, new people coming here for different types of labor, but people who've already been here who are crowded out from the labor because they've been priced out.
Are you optimistic or pessimistic for the United States and the current trajectory that it's on?
Why? I mean, I don't know. I don't understand quite where does it go? Optimistic or pessimistic that what the United States will fail?
Yeah, I mean, I guess what
does failure look like then?
For me, failure maybe it's not failure, because I don't think it will collapse like that, but I think that the way of life that we know it shifts, and some of our luxuries that we've become complacent about will be no longer available.
Well, let me tell you this. So right now there's a bill that's being proposed before the Massachusetts state legislature to limit the amount of miles that people can drive. Okay? So, and it looks like it has pretty substantial support. Now, what do you think of something like that?
I don't like it
Why not?
because it's just like a limitation.
It's a limitation.
Yeah, it's a taking away of freedom.
Okay. So
I'm sure there's pros. I could think of many pros as well, but
like what?
Decreased emissions, less traffic would be two that I could think of off the top of my head. But I think that I've gone down these rabbit holes, and I think that more control usually leads to a worse path than less control. And they both have their pros and cons, but I would rather let the market like decide things in people's natural relationships than having something imposed on that.
Yeah.
Which I guess like at the end of the day, it's going to organize itself anyway, and someone's going to be imposing something on someone else. So it's like very difficult to say like what is the true solution. But
Yeah. No, I don't know how that's a good idea or why that's a priority, right? But I think if more things are like there's probably a group of people out there that are like, no, this is good.
yeah,
And I think I'm good, and this is good because it will reduce the effects of climate change, right?
Mm-hmm.
Great. If we continue to propose things like this, then I'm not optimistic because I just think that like there's two things going on here. It's it's social engineering, and you're trying to limit people's ability to move. Why? That's not your business. You know what I mean? So I just think that, but there's a counter to that. I mean, there's also crazy things that can come from any angle. But we've lost sight in the United States, especially in Massachusetts, of what matters, what's good for people. I carry this, and this I learned from politics very early in city council. Everyone is brainwashed. They're being manipulated on a mass scale on a daily basis, and they don't know it. They think their ideas are their own, and that they've thought of them, and that they're clever, and that they somehow align with them. But they're being led to God knows where. And if we don't enable people, our own people, to think on their own, to have agency, then I'm pessimistic. Because and it goes back to like the beginning of the conversation, having an awareness, right? Like knowing who you are, and these are things that we fundamentally lack, but we've lost the plot. There are people talking about things that just do not matter, and people have been made to believe that they matter, and they get in the way of true progress.
So if you, and this will be my final question, if you could unpack it down to like in the simplest form, what would you recommend from your own perspective as the recipe or the action that an individual can take to have an impact, a positive impact?
Improve yourself. Stop getting swept up in things that don't matter to you, that won't affect you. You know, the more that you can improve yourself, then the better example that you can become or be for someone else.
And it'll resonate.
Yeah, that's the only way. And you can't convince anyone to do that. People are so used to playing and projecting out their emotions and all this, and it's just that people are just spewing all over everyone out there, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But you're like, go within. Like, and I don't mean to sound all spiritually and whatnot, but like really take a hard look in the mirror.
Do a 7-day silent retreat.
Yeah, do a 10-day Vipassana retreat. But yeah, no, it's take a look in the mirror. But I think some people just don't like what they see, and to continue, like to to really, it's hard work, right? But you can't cast aspersions and tell people who they need to be if you haven't done that stuff yourself.
Right. Absolutely. That's really good advice.
So
if people, and this has been an extremely interesting conversation, if people wanted to reach out to you or wanted to see like, your business or interested in anything you talked about today, where can they find you?
Sure. You can find us at QUBICLabs.com. That's www.QUBICLabs.com. More information about that. We've got BostonBlockchainWeek.com as well. This year we're hosting the event September 8 to 10. Check out the website. Stay tuned for updates. We'd love to have you here in Quincy for what has become New England's biggest blockchain and digital assets conference. This year's theme is the digital infrastructure stack. We'll go into a lot more of what we started to outline today.
Fantastic. Well, I appreciate you coming on.
Thanks, Jack.